Now we are going to talk about the types of requirements. So when we are about to collect requirements, what is it that we are going to look for? Okay, so we have some a classification here just to give us an idea of what types of requirements we might be looking for. So the first type is business requirements. So this is the high level kind of needs at the very high level of the organization. Why is this solution needed? And when we talk about solution, we talk about software solution here. Okay, so why is this solution needed from a very high level? Now, a general recommendation that should be measurable and time bounded, but it depends on the kind of system you're working on. It's not always possible, but obviously the example here is a financial example. Financial goals are like generally can be measurable and can be time bounded. So here, uh, the business goal of the requirements of the organization is to increase revenue by accepting credit card payments before the new year. Okay, so increasing the revenue can be measured, and the timing can also be specified here. But if we think of something like the migration from Sakai to Brightspace that we have in our LMS here at Western, now a general business requirement could be to modernize the learning management system, for example. So not necessarily has a time bound, not exactly have a very specific measure, but it depends on the kind of system you're working on. If you can have the requirements set in a way that is measurable and time bounded, that would be perfect. Now, stakeholders are anybody or any group that has any interest in the system. Oftentimes, we focus on the users, the end users, the one that will actually use the system. But and definitely these are very important stakeholders. But this is not the only group that we need to think about. Now, there are other types of uh, groups or roles that would be involved in the system, not necessarily by using it. For example, a manager might have a requirement that that project doesn't exceed a certain budget, or the admin group, they're not going to use the system, but they have a requirement that the system has to run on Unix because the servers are Unix based. Okay, so different types, like a customer or a supplier might have a requirement that the system has to be able to integrate with their system, for example. Okay, so we're talking about groups or individuals that have interest in the system, but not necessarily by using it. So using it, users are important stakeholders, but they are not the only ones. Okay, so we need to communicate their interest. Why are they interested? How they are interested? How, in what sense they are interested? And what are the needs of their interest that need to be met? Okay. Now, it's a very important question when you start your requirement elicitation or the requirement engineering process to ask who are the stakeholders and how are we going to collect their requirements. The solution requirements, so the solution we in software engineering, we're talking about software solution. So these are the requirements related to the solution itself. Okay, and they have two categories. There are the function requirements. So these function requirements describe how the system is going to be used within the solution. Okay, so it describes behaviors or actions that to be done on the system. The non-functional requirements are requirements not related to behavior or actions, but general qualities that need to be met by the system. Other names for the non-functional requirements is the service level requirements, supplementary or quality requirements. And actually, they are very relevant. These type of requirements are very relevant to the architecture design because they also translate directly to the quality attributes that are the input to the architecture design process. Example function requirements like the ability to search product, compliance with the specified business rules. So this is something that you will be developing, we will be programming on the system eventually. Okay, so certain behavior or data validation rules. Okay, the examples for non-functional requirements, here are some examples. Now you see this set of examples here. We have scalability, reliability, availability, so all things that end with ability. Okay, so these are usually translate directly to the quality attributes. These are just examples of things that you might be inspired with or things that you might be considered, but every system is different. You may even need to come up with your own term depending on the system that you're working on. So it doesn't mean that every single system you work on has to meet all these has to list requirements in all these categories. Okay, so every system is different. These are there's just things to think about. Now, the last category is the transition requirements. That is the requirements that we need to consider to move from a current state to the new state. So the new solution will create a new state, right? So we just need to figure out what are the requirements or what are the needs of the transition. So, for example, data conversion is something that needs to be considered as a part of this category. For example, when we moved from Sakai to Brightspace, there are some data migration had to happen. Also, some training and some access to documentation needed to happen to learn the new system. In addition to that, so you're not gonna find this in the BA guide, but if we're talking specifically about software, the requirements for the deployment could be considered under this category. For example, a very popular deployment way now is like it's a deployment within a Docker container. So you could have this as a one of the requirements under this category. So these are general descriptions of the type of things you need to consider. Now, if you look at different books, you may have different terms or different definitions. We are not talking about specific or strict standards here. We're just talking about general guidelines. These are kind of concepts that you need to have in mind, regardless of the specific terms or specific definitions.